Okay, here we go. So I had a request to make a video on the haplogroups T and J, or the comparison between T and J and some other haplogroups. So uh, I didn't haven't done it yet, but I'll do it. I'll be doing it now because he requested me to do it. So let's go to the information here. I have it in the description as well. It might be a little spaced out. I don't know how it's looking, but anyways. So the information here that we have here is in the description. As you can see, I copied it and pasted it. This is about as good as it gets as far as what everyone's haplogroup is and who they are. You want to double check, but let me respond to David's request here. It's David USA. He asks, hold on, let me find his question here. I'll try to zoom in a little bit. Okay, this is might not be able to see it too well, but let me adjust this here. Zoom in as much as I can without let me see if that's good. I guess that's good. So there we go. So T is only 5% of the data set, marking or making T a poor proxy for the Phoenician. Yeah, the Phoenicians, to begin with, they weren't homogeneous. They're not one of the original ancient civilizations. So the Phoenicians are already mixed. But I've said before that a signature of the Phoenicians would be the T, the G, the J, the E, and maybe a couple more. But that's what the Phoenicians consist of, not just T. It's just that T was in the area. And I mean, that's pretty good percentage, 5.1, to make up part of the T haplogroup. Let me see, just make sure everything's good here. Yep. Just want to make sure that everything's being shared correctly. So 99% are Arab and Muslim background today, because mostly T is mostly in the Horn of Africa right now, and it's also in the Levant area. It's in but this is where they are today, spread out. I had to find where they originated from, and let me see. Let's just go through what he says here. In the same contrast on J's, if it is J's, the percentage of ethnically a Jew can be very small amount. The Jewish people are typically, like, I think 20% J2, J1, J2. Of course, the Cohen model haplotype is J1, and J2 would be Judaic and or Israelite, otherwise Israelite. But the J1 M172, I believe to be the descendants of David and Solomon, because it's the largest J2 lineage. But of course, it's subject to change all the time. Some of this stuff is pretty well placed. And some of these are hard to place, like the T and the L. The T and the L are really kind of hard to place because they're not where they originated from, with the exception of Tarshish, because the T in Iberia shows up in one of the Jewish populations, the Bragança Jewish population in Portugal, shows up as 14% because I believe the Jewish relationship with the city of Tarshish. And of course, Tarshish is the son of Javan, the son of Japheth. So that's the strongest connection for T being the descendants of Javan. But they were also Greek. They were also in the area of Greece and Anatolia, because its four sons of Javan are Elisha, Dodanim, Kittim, and Tarshish. But the Elisha, Dodanim, Kittim, sometimes Rodanim or something like that, they're in more the area of the Aegean Sea or Anatolia and the Greek Sea people. I would say that T represents the Greek Sea people. That's why they became part of Phoenicians, because they were the Sea people. And the Greeks had trade with the Horn of Africa. I've actually seen videos of it where it shows the relationship between Greece and the Horn of Africa, and that there's Greek DNA in Africa, in the Horn of Africa, and there's, of course, probably Egyptian DNA, mostly Egyptian, in Greece, which is E3, probably E3, maybe they call it V13, because V12 is in Africa, V13 is in Europe or Greece, and that would be the E haplogroup from Africa in Greece, because they had a relationship, they had trade. And that's why if you look in the Horn of Africa, you're going to see the T there. The T is right there in the Horn of Africa. So, and that's the reason why the T is there, is because Elisha, Dodanim, and Kittim, and of course, Kittim is associated with the island of Crete. The island of Cyprus, I think. The island of Cyprus is associated with the descendants of Javan, one of the sons of Javan. But of course, they're Mediterranean. They're just sea people in the Mediterranean, basically. As opposed to the L. The L is Greek people too, but the L is the Thracians. And the reason why they're over in India is because of Alexander the Great, because they were Greek warriors. They were used as warriors. So that's the reason why the L is over in India. A lot of people and a lot of these haplogroups are not found where they originate, especially in the area of Anatolia, because of the difficulties, wars and persecutions and everything. Everybody just kind of disappeared or moved to other places. But a lot of these haplogroups went to India. So you'll find the T in India, you'll find the L in India, and you'll find the F, the Arameans, in India, because the Arameans had controlled the trade routes. And the Arameans were so influential that Aramaic became the lingua franca at the time of Jesus. That's how influential the Arameans were. By controlling the trade routes, they didn't do it so much conquering, or they may have done some conquering, but they, by controlling the trade routes or doing trade, they controlled the spoken language. And there's a version of Aramaic, which is called Syriac, that's all the way over in India, and it's on a tablet in India, side by side with Chinese. So that's the extent of the Aramaeans. And if you look at a map, when it starts with F, it starts out in India. I mean, according to them, starts out in India because that's where it's found today. It's not found very much, of course, in the area of Aramean, which is like Syria or somewhere, or Levant area. So it's not found very much in where it originated from, but it is found in India. A lot of these haplogroups, the same thing with the Lydians. The Lydians, you can't find hardly a trace of them in Lydia, which is Anatolia, which is where all the battles were. You know, it's like King on the Mountain. So the original people of Anatolia, which includes the T and the A, I mean, and Aram, the descendants of Aram, the Arameans, they basically got kicked off the mountain playing King on the Mountain, but they are found where they had trade all the way to India. So, in other words, who carries T are Jewish origin, Sephardim, and less Gentile. Now, the T, like I said, the T is very, very little in Jewish populations. The only place, like I mentioned, where it's a significant percentage is in Portugal of this one Jewish population in Bragança. The other population, there's 0% T in their population, the Jewish population, but it's the majority J2 in their population. So it's kind of clear that the more conservative Jews were J2. I'm like a huge, huge percent. I've showed it before a number of times. I could probably look it up too. But let me just try to get through this first. 2% of the whole human race. Most T populations live in the crescent regions by Euphrates River and Tigris. Well, that's still not too far from its origin, which would be, basically Phoenicia, southern Iraq to Sudan, Egypt. Well, Sudan and Egypt, that's the Egyptian trade right there, the Horn of Africa. Now, comparison between J or T, Y DNA, is clear T is the Jewish bloodlines. I find it hard to believe. For one thing, T is under the M9 designation. And if we go, you can see a clear distinction here. If we go over here, you got Shem's lineage is J, that's I and J. Okay. And Elam is H. Asher is G. F is Aram and Lud. But when you go to the Eurasian population, this is all under the designation of M9. M9 is Eurasian. They're all Eurasian designation. So it includes the T and the L. Of course, the L I have is T-Raz, the Thracians, which went with Alexander to India, to the Indus Valley. The T went to India too, but I think it was by way of trade because it's more on the other side of India, like as if they migrated or traveled by way of the ocean. So the T is there in India too, but on the other side of India. We got P.S. Meshach, that's a new rather new designation because they don't usually show P as a lineage, but it is a lineage though. And so it has to be someone's lineage. Then they have under P, they have Q and R, but these are clearly two different peoples. This would be the Medes. This would be Gomer in Europe. Totally different migrations, totally different people. S is connected to K. Here's the T. I have the T as Javan. There's the Horn of Africa. I didn't write this, by the way, and South Asia. It's Grok that wrote that. So that's where it, and the T is found in Iberia, like I said before as well. But the T is not found in Jewish population so much. I think when they average it out with a 14% in one Jewish population, it averages out to, I don't know, 3 or 4% or whatever in other populations that really didn't have them. And I can show that. I can show that chart, that data as well. Okay, then we have Ham's lineage out of Africa. Got Mitzrayim. Now D is all of Canaan now, not just the tribe of Sinim, because it makes sense. These are major haplogroups. You got E is Mitzrayim. It fits better. It works better. D is Canaan. B is Cush. And A is Put. It just works better. And of course, C is Nimrod, the son of Cush. Because of course, C cannot be anybody else. And of course, we know that J is Arphaxad because of the Cohen modal haplotype. We can't forget the Cohen modal haplotype, which is J1P58. Now it has Arabs and Hebrews, that's true. But it's the only reason why they have Hebrews here is because of the Cohen modal haplotype. They have to say Hebrews. But now the J2, they just say Neolithic, Middle East, South Asia, but it's the same lineage. Especially this JM172, that's a single J2 lineage. There's more J2 lineages than M172. So I believe J to be basically Judah, descendants of Judah, with an exception of maybe another Israelite tribe or something that would have to be investigated. Okay. You got I1 and I2. I have them as Dan, Scandinavian, Asher, and the Balkans in Central Europe. Because that seems to me to be where they migrated to. So, yeah, let me go ahead and pull up this diagram if I can here. It's a pie chart. It's showing basically the Sephardic percentages. Of course, I've shown them before, but sometimes it has to be, you have to show it multiple times here. What do we got here? Working on it. Okay, let's just go ahead and click on this one. See if we can find it. Because I didn't have it prepared, but let's see. But as I was saying, the F, they have the F starting out basically in India or Asia, I guess. Like this. Let me see which one's better. F, Y, D, and A. These charts aren't exactly the same, but they're pretty much the same. and it has them basically. Of course, they believe that C produced F. Of course, Nimrod can't produce a Semitic lineage, but that's what they think. I don't know. What am I supposed to open up in photos? I don't know. I don't know what to use. Say just once. I don't know. I don't know why it resets again. Here's an interesting chart right here. This has Hamitic DNA in Ireland, believe it or not, but it goes way, way back. Oh, okay, now this is going to be harder to see, but I'm going to have to open it up. Okay, so this is what they claim, the Out of Africa claim. They have it's basically in Mesopotamia right here. But yeah, the F, of course, being Aramean and Lydian, did start in this area. That's where they have it. And then they say the F produced the G, and then the G produced the H, wherever the H is. H is down here, the Dravidians. And then you have the IJ. You have the I up here, IY up here, and the J over here. But the J's, kind of like that. And then there's the element OPQ, RS, and T. But this is not really helpful here, so we'll just X that out. Let's see if I can find the one chart that we need to look at. Here's an interesting chart too. While I get sidetracked, as long as I'm getting sidetracked. This is the Uyghurs. Two photos again. Now notice this. Now here's K. That's interesting. 18% K. You know, K is tubal. I have K designated as tubal. That's interesting. Which is should be expected because it's Magog, Meshech, and Tubal. They tend to be in many of the same areas, with the exception of Italy. K is in Italy as well, but not this. It's only 8% in central Italy today. But this is rather interesting. There's a very, very large amount of K, Tubal, in the Uyghur population, which accompanies the O and the N. The O and the N are both Magog. Let me see, no P showing up here. Would be Meshech. But notice this J2. You have 30%, 34% J2, which is on the Silk Road where the merchants traveled. And if you look at the Uyghurs, it just shows up that they're Judaic. Anyways, they kind of look Judaic, even though they have a large amount of Tubal and Arwades Ashkenaz and Elamites and Magog and Nimrod. Here's O again, which is Magog. Q, which is the Medes. D is also in the area. D, of course, being Canaan, the Sinite tribe in Asia, the Altai Mountains, and Tibet, and southern China, and Japan. And they're also in this area of the Uyghurs with a 2%. So that's interesting there. Let's see if I can find the chart I'm looking for, or the one that I'm looking for. One of the ones I'm looking for. Here's one right here. Yeah, here's two. Okay, why Portuguese? This is the one I need to show here, and then we'll look at the Sephardic Jews in Portugal. So here we go with this one. Very important here. Very important to understand the relationship of tea in a Portuguese population. So you can see right here, tea is this dark gray color. So the community at large in Portugal only has a sliver of it. But if you go up here to the Bragança Jews, it's a big chunk right there, this tea. And what other haplogroup do they have? The majority haplogroup is always, in Jewish populations, the majority is always J2. And now here we have 2/3 of the Belmonte Jews are J2. So that kind of seals the deal right there, because the R1B is of the local population. See this R1B here? That's the local population. So that shows up in the Belmonte Jews as well as the Bragança Jews too. Yeah, so it's only like a quarter in the Belmonte Jews, but for the Bragança Jews is almost a third, about a third almost, not quite a third, would be the R1B. But this T is very significant because it's like 14% or something like that. It's not saying exactly how much it is, but that's very significant, except for this community of Jews has zero T, of course. So let's go to the other. Let's go to the other map of Sephardic Jews populations. And here we have a T. Where's the T? Well, isn't that interesting? Look at this. Now, if T is in the Jewish population and there's no T in any of these Sephardic Jewish populations, then there's a problem with T being Jewish. Now, I've shown this before. I've shown this many times before, but just to reemphasize that there's zero T in Morocco. Of course, these are Sephardic Jewish populations. So the Sephardic Jews in Morocco have zero T. Sephardic Jews in Libya have zero T. The Mediterranean, zero T. But look at what they do have as like 2/3 right here in the Mediterranean or Italian population is J2. So there comes up the very, very strong Y haplogroup of J2 in the Jewish communities. There's Bulgaria. It's not quite a third. Turkey's a little bit less. But it's always present, and it's usually the largest percentage of the population. And then the same thing for Ashkenazi Jews as well. They don't have much T in their population, but I'm thinking they're averaging it out with the that population in Portugal whenever they do have the T in the population. So we have that. Now, I don't know if we have the Ashkenazi Jewish percentage. Well, we could have maybe a pie chart. This is Jewish Y chromosomes. Is this Ashkenazi? This might be Ashkenazi. Let me see. Yeah, Jewish Y chromosomes. Yeah, 2015 Ashkenazi Jews Y haplogroup. And of course, 48% is J, J2, J1. And of course, you have Einstein's E1b there. This one's an important significance because they spent a good amount of time in Assyria. Most Jewish populations spend a good amount of time in Assyria. So that's the reason for the G in their population is because of Assyria. Then you have the R1A, which is Ashkenaz, the namesake of Ashkenazi Jews, because they were living in the land of Ashkenaz, R1A. Of course, Ashkenaz is the son of Gomer. Riphath, R1B, is the son of Gomer. And then R2 Togarma. But here's the T right there, 3%. You have 3% of T in Ashkenazi Jews. But that's because of the 14% or so in the Braganza Jews, which I guess, well, you could call them Ashkenazi, you could call them Sephardic or whatever, but this is still not even close to the J, 48%, which is the norm. About half, a percentage like this is a norm for Jewish populations. The majority percentage is J. So it's really clear, besides the fact that the colon modal haplotype is J1P58. So the IJ lineage, here's my I. This is me right there. My 1% managed to remain of the tribe of Dan within the Ashkenazi Jewish population. Or maybe they returned to the Ashkenazi Jewish population or something. But that's my token percentage right there. 1%. 1% of my lineage right there in Ashkenazi Jewish populations. Which, of course, I1 would be Dan and I2 would be Asher. Okay. So that's it's really, fairly clear as far as I can tell that the T is not even close to being the J2 or the descendants of Arphaxad, Abraham, Jacob, or Israel. So I can't honestly have it, or I can honestly agree with Dr. Jensen's choice for T being the Jewish population. But let's go ahead and see what else David says here, because I think he says a little bit more. So T is only 1% in the whole human race, and it's not very much in the Jewish population. Most T population lives in the crescent regions, Tigris, Egypt. Now comparison between J or T. Oh. Okay, the comparison between J or T, Y DNA. It's clear T is the Jewish bloodline. Well, I can't see it. I can't see T as being the Jewish bloodline. But that is what Dr. Jensen says. That was his choice. He hasn't said much about it recently because I, sent him messages about the colon modal haplotype and stuff. So he hasn't said too much about it recently. But human Y chromosome haplogroup L1 M22 traces Neolithic expansion. I don't know if this mitochondrial. Is that a mitochondrial SNP? Or is that, it's hard to tell because sometimes there's a Y. If you don't know what they all are, it could be a Y chromosome. Y chromosome haplogroup is what he's saying. So we'll just go over that. Neolithic expansion in the West and supports Elamite Dravidian connection. Okay, the Y chromosome. But the H, unless you're going FGHI or FGH, but that's going backwards. If you're going forward alphabetically, you're going backwards in genetically. J can be found in the Middle East, but not on iDNA. Yeah, ID, but I branches off from J though, so really it doesn't matter. So the IJ lineage is from Arphaxad. I'm pretty sure that the I1 is dead, unless I see some information that it's somebody else. The I1 is Dan. I2 didn't seem to me to be the same lineage as Dan. It seemed to have its own migration, its own, separate migration from I1. So I have I2 as Asher because they were the other seafaring Israelites. Okay, so T and L can both be found in Levant. Yeah, but if you ask Grok, he'll say, "Oh, it's rare." Yeah, but if it's there, it means they were there. And Grok will always come back and say, "Yeah, but it's rare." Yeah, but it was there. You can't think very well. Yeah, T and L can be found in the Levant because T and L are both Greek, by the way. Both of them make up a good portion of the Greek population. Of course, there's other people today and everything, but T and L are basically the original inhabitants of Greece. Would be the Thracians, and of course there's other. But the T, of course, is more Mediterranean. The T was like Anatolia and the Aegean Sea area, and like I said, Cyprus, which is Mediterranean, which is right off the shore from Phoenicia. So that's why Phoenicians have the T in their population. Oh, and there's another thing that I need to mention because I had the Phoenicians traveling from the Mediterranean to America, but I'm thinking, well, that's probably not the case because of the French. The reason the French have, the reason the Native Americans in the area of the Great Lakes have the T, the G, the J1, the J2, the I1, the I2 is because of the French and their association with the Indians in the area of the Great Lakes. And of course, the French are still there in Quebec. So that shoots that idea. So it's probably the reason why the indigenous population, and they call that post-Columbian or after Columbus. So it's probably the French are the reason for the T, the G, the J1, the J2, the I1, the I2 in the Native American populations, and the E as well. The E and the B are also found sometimes. But like Grok says, it's rare. But anyways, that's a new change. I think it's the first time I mentioned that on a video. So no more Phoenicians traveling from the Mediterranean to the Great Lakes region mining the copper, because the copper has a signature. You can tell where it goes, and it went as far south as the what do you call them, mountain people. But I don't. If it went to Europe, I think people would be able to identify that, and I don't think it did. At least not with the information I have now. So that's a new change there. Okay, so T is only 5% set, making T a poor proxy for Phoenicians. Well, again, Phoenician is not an original ancient civilization. The Phoenicians were a group of people that had the T, had the G, had the J, had the I, and the E, and probably or possibly the B. But yeah, the T is not Phoenician. The T is Mediterranean sea people. It's Mediterranean Greek sea people. Of course, they existed all the way to Iberia in Tarshish. Tarshish is in Iberia, and that's the reason why the Braganza Jews have about 14% of the population has T because of their association with Tarshish in Iberia. Okay. G is Caucasus. Well, that today it is, but G is also in the area of Assyria. H has to be Elam because of Dravidian. I, 2 in Balkans, that I believe to be Asher. J1, that's the Cohen modal haplotype and Arab. J2, West Asian. So this is where they are today. And of course, they go as far as the Uyghurs in China. But it doesn't mean that they're Chinese in origin. I'm talking about the origin of the lineage. The origin of the lineage is not Chinese. I mean, unless you want to call Jewish people Chinese, but that's a stretch. J1 is Arab, but it's also the Cohen modal haplotype. So some of J1 is Arab, and the other parts are clearly Judaic, or not Judaic, but tribe of Levi, which with the Cohen modal haplotype. That's a tribe of Levi. Okay, K is not just LT. K is Elam, N, O, P, Q, R, S, and T. And the L and the T are brothers. L is Tiraz, T is Javan. They're brothers, sons of Japheth. And of course, K is its own lineage, which is Tubal as well. Of course, L is in the Indus Valley, like I said, because of Alexander, wanted to ride some elephants. T is in Assyria and Phoenicia. Well, that's still, Assyria is still close to its origin because it's a Mediterranean. And Phoenicia, that's Mediterranean, crescent populations where Abraham traveled. Yeah, but the T is, remember, T is M9. The T is M9, which is not Arphaxad. Okay, Abraham traveled Jews. Sure, he traveled in the area, but it doesn't mean that T is Abraham. Making it more clear, K is L and T, Shem, GHIJ, and K. That's a lot. That's a lot for Jewish population. K, all of K is Japheth, which God said he would enlarge Japheth. There's 7 lineages under K, the M9. They're all Eurasian. So K is all Eurasian, which includes the L and the T. T, Judaic T, M70, not convinced. Albeit it's not clear J is Arphaxad. Well, it is when you consider the co-and modal haplotype is J1s, and that goes all the way back to Arphaxad. Or either T is for Phoenician or Assyrian. Again, T is more Mediterranean than Phoenician. It's just Phoenician because of the Mediterranean. And G is Assyrian anyway. Even though they're still sons of Japheth, they're still in nations. T also can be found majorities in southern Iraq. He says Arphaxad, but T is not Semitic. Okay, not I, because I do not found in southern Iraq. T, M70 more in southern Iraq. J is Muslims, Arabs, migrated from Arabia. H is Elam, Iran today. The predictions cannot be owned. Please do a video, J versus T. We will be settled. Shalom. So there's David's message there. Let me just go back and look at the outline that I have from Grok that Grok helped me to put together, and it shows all the different branches here. If I can do this, I don't know. Anyways, I'll just now I'm having trouble with my computer. There we go. Oh, it was getting bigger. Okay. All right. That's better. So, what do we have? Okay, this is why we have all the information here is in the description. If it took, I think it took. Okay. So, this whole outline is in the description. You can look it up, the same thing, maybe not with the same font, but okay. So IJ, Arphaxad Shem, defining SNPs. So I have the root as IJ, being the oldest son of Noah. It could be Japheth too, because of IJK, but I just have Shem as the oldest one. The defining SNPs is M429. And in other words, IJ being the root has these SNPs. M429, which is the IJK, by the way. That's the IJK SNP, which includes K, is M429. But then the K has its own SNP marker that's unique, because you have the shared SNPs and you have the unique SNPs. Now this has M49 as the unique. But that's the IJK SNP, so it's got to be, it can't be unique, it has to be shared. But anyways, well, it has it unique and shared. It's both shared and unique, which is not what I wanted, but anyways. So yeah, these are all important. The M89, the M168, everyone has these, by the way, and the M429, except for the younger brothers of Arphaxad do not have the M429, but they do have the M168 and the M89. So let's move on. Okay. Shem's lineage. Okay. Now here's the unique for J. Is it J or IJ? Here's the unique for I. That's me, 170. That's my lineage. 304. Yeah, so 304. So according to Grok, the I has 304. J, Arabs for 8. Arabs, Hebrews. Yeah, see, J1 is listed as both Arabs and Hebrew, which is correct because it's both Arabs, and J1 is the tribe of Levi as well, which is one of the tribes of Israel. So there's still a lot of work to find out who's who. This one I believe to be the descendants of David and Solomon, but that needs work on it. IJ, a subclade, aligns with Dan, Asher, and as Israelites tribes. Now H is 69 is Elam because H is the only Semitic lineage where the Elamo-Dravidians are. Now, the Elamo-Dravidians don't only have H in their population, they have R too or whatever, but R is not a Semitic lineage. We always have to determine, the first thing we have to determine is what's Semitic, what's Eurasian from Japheth, and what's Hamitic from Ham. So H, being Semitic, is the only it's the only haplogroup in the area of it's the only Semitic haplogroup in the area of Elamo-Dravidians. Of course, Asher, this always comes back as being Asher. G is always in the area. It's unique, SNP, M201. Okay, and of course, yeah, it's in the Jewish population. And then you have Aram and Lud. F1 through 5 is Aram. F undefined is Lud. K is separate. It's not Semitic. It's under M9 and it's Tubal. I mean, well, K is Tubal. Under M9, everything under M9 is Eurasian. So Japheth's lineage, Eurasian birth order. Well, this is not exactly the birth order. It's just, that's the lettering order, which I don't think is the birth order. But anyways, everything is M9. Every one of these are M9. M9, 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 and M9. This is an identifying SNP marker of Eurasians, is M9. Every Eurasian has this marker of M9. And each one has its unique marker. Of course, Javanti is the Horn of Africa. And South Asia, well, South Asia, it's like to the right side of India, which is probably from sea travel, merchants, sea merchants, the Greek sea people from the Horn of Africa all the way to India. So now we have the Hamitic lineage. Mitzrayim, this is the proper order, hopefully. E is Mitzrayim, D is Canaan, B is Cush, except Nimrod is the oldest son of Cush. Nimrod has M168. D has M168. E has M168, and I just verified it just to make sure that they share it because of the CT because of the CT haplogroup. It says it's supposed to have it, which makes, I mean, it fits in with the scenario of C being the son of Cush, except for the descendants of the other descendants, or the brothers of Nimrod in Africa, do not have M168. Neither do the cousins of Nimrod in Africa do not have the M168. So Nimrod, being the oldest, can share. Nimrod, being the oldest, can have this SNP marker of his Uncle Shem, or great Uncle Shem, and great Uncle Japheth. And of course, B and A are the odd ones out. They're the ones that lack the M168. So B lacks it, A lacks it. They're the only ones that lack it. And in other words, A and B are the only ones that don't have an SNP marker tying them to the rest of the world. There's other markers that do tie them with the rest of the world, but as far as SNP markers, Y chromosome up here on top, they have no, I mean, by way of the SNPs, you can't say that A and B have any connection. Well, if they have a connection obviously by other DNA, but not by way of the SNP. They don't have a connection. And so they're the odd ones out. They're the ones that lost it, which Grok says is rare, but it looks to me like they don't have it. So regardless of how rare it is, and of course the African lineages are much longer because of the reproduction rate is much faster, about twice as fast as the ordinary reproduction age of the majority of the other haplogroups. But anyways, Nimrod retained this M186 haplogroup, which is possible because his uncle, he has a common ancestor with his great uncle Shem and his great uncle Japheth, which of course is Noah. So Ham, he has the marker originally by way of Ham, but these the Cush descendants and the other Cush descendants and the Put descendants don't have the marker. They lost it somehow, for whatever way. I don't know if it's environment or if the reproduction rate or whatever, genetic distance, they don't have the marker somehow. And they're the odd ones out. Everybody else has it. So it still works because of the Con, because the king of the world in the area. So, Elamites can only be H. Gomer can only be R because of the R1A is Ashkenaz, and that's the land of Ashkenaz where the Ashkenazi Jews are, namesake of the Ashkenazi Jews. So that's good I think that's good for now. Thank David for his participation or for his question. See, he's here and he just got in. Please comment on the questions. M9 is MTD. No, that's a M9 is a Y chromosome SNP marker. It's not mitochondrial DNA. Okay, if thoughts of Sephardic Jews on E1B1B, Y DNA is Hamitic on male lineage, is it still mtDNA connects to Judaic? Well, the Jews can have, and well, I mean, obviously it's not the original haplogroup of Arphaxad, but the proximity of the Jewish people to Egypt means that they have some that were originally descended from Mitzrayim who became Jews. Albert Einstein is a good example of that. Albert Einstein has the E1B1B apparently, or something like that. But he's a Jew. All of his other autosomal DNA, mitochondrial DNA probably is all Jewish. It doesn't mean that Albert Einstein is not a Jew, because the majority of his autosomal DNA is Jewish, even though he has an Egyptian Y chromosome. So by the time Albert Einstein is born, it's not that much Egyptian. It's just that he has a Egyptian Y haplogroup. But the rest of him is all Jewish, for all intents and purposes. So that's some good questions, yeah. Still, yeah, his mitochondrial DNA is probably, I don't know what it is, but it's probably Semitic. In fact, the majority of Europeans are Semitic for another reason. Let me see. Can you explain on the mtDNA Jewish lineage? Yeah, that's harder to do because Semitic is the daughters of Shem, which married, for example, the descendants of Gomer, married the other descendants of Japheth. So, just because it's Semitic doesn't mean it's Jewish, and doesn't mean it's not Jewish either. It's because 95% of Europeans have Semitic DNA, but they're other daughters of Shem. For example, Madai asked to marry one of the daughters of Shem. It's written in the book of Jasher somewhere. And everywhere the Medes go, the Q haplogroup, a lineage of either A, X, or W, which is all the same lineage, just different branches. Everywhere the Q goes, one of those lineages follow. One or more follow. Like in Europe, it's X and W, because the Medes are known to have gone into Europe. The Q haplogroup is still in Europe to this day. So is the X and the W in the area where the Medes are known to have gone. So, but that's one lineage. The other lineages are what? J, U, T, H. I'm an H, H3G. It's Semitic, but it's not necessarily Jewish Semitic. You know what I mean? But that's a bigger study that I haven't put too much time in, so we have to do more study on that. It could be Jewish Semitic DNA. It's very possible for it to be Jewish Semitic DNA, but you'd have to follow the lineage to find out exactly who's who and what's what. Now, who was Rebecca and who's Leah and who, that's not easy to determine. But, it is a study that could be made, I suppose. N1B and N9B mtDNA are they the same? They're both N, but I don't know if they got a different letter designation. They look like they're the same thing because N is the main group of the Semitic DNA, because it's L, M, which is Eurasian, and then there's N, which is Semitic. Everything after N is Semitic. The Eurasian is EZDQ something or other. But the Semitic DNA is everything after N, which includes J, T, H, and some of the other ones like that, I think. But yeah, it depends if these are. Sometimes they'll change. They'll change the letter designation, but if they're both N, they're both probably originally the same lineage, just two branches of the same lineage. N1B and N9B, yeah, probably two branches of the same lineage, I would think, because then there's a H and there's, we do have, as a matter of fact, we do have, let me see if we can find a mitochondrial DNA thing here or to look at. Mitochondrial. Oh, why? There's Y. Mitochondrial, spotted juice. It would be another study, of course. It'd be a good study. Here, what's this? Well, here's Italy here. I'm going to show this because yes, I think I'm still showing stuff. So, in central Italy, I just want to show this one thing. Central Italy, to this day, there's a K2. 8% of central Italy is K, which is said to be the original population was Tubal in Italy. Everybody else from outside, J2s, of course, Judaic. R1b is descendant of Gomer, Ripath. E is Egyptian, Mitzrayim. G is Assyrian. I, well, there's a big I in Italy. That's Semitic. And then there's J1, I guess. J1A, J2. But that's a lot of J. That's a lot of J in there. Like, I don't know what that is. Not half, but it's more than a third of Italy is Judaic. Well, here's the mitochondrial on this side. So let me see. So the H, maybe make this bigger. For example, the H is Semitic, the J is Semitic, the T is Semitic, the U is Semitic. And I'm guessing, well, the W and the X are Semitic, and the N is Semitic. M is Eurasian, which is a very, very small amount, is 1%. L is, of course, Hamitic, or the daughters of Ham. That's 1%. I is 4%. I don't know what I is. E, Z, D, G, and then RO is other. Yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing I is Semitic too, and other is Semitic. R, I think, is Semitic, yeah. ROA. Yeah. So most of European mitochondrial DNA is Semitic. But let me see if I can find the other thing. Guess we're having some weather here. Let me see. I gotta find a mitochondrial map. Mitochondrial map. There's mtDNA. I don't know if this is going to show much. It says empty DNA. Anyway, mitochondrial Eve, L. So you have L 1 through 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. L3, from L3, they say split the M and the N. Only the M split first, according to most diagrams, and then the N split. And here we have all the N's are AS, BF, R, PU, HV, JT, and K. HV, JT, and K, and BF. These are all Semitic. They're all under N, and the AS2, and the IWXY. And where's the A? Oh, yeah, there's the A. A and the B, Semitic, and the I, X, and W. Anyway, the Eurasian daughters of Japheth are the C, Z, D, E, G, and Q. CZ. CZ, D, E, G, and Q. These are the Eurasian. And notice the daughters of Shem are less than the daughters of Japheth are less than the daughters of Shem, which is the reason why Madai asked to marry one of the daughters of Madai, because there's 7 sons of Japheth and only like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 daughters of Shem at the most. This might be even just 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's say Japheth had 7 sons, but he only had 5 daughters. So Madai asked to marry one of the daughters of Shem, which is the A lineage, the A, X, and W, and I guess I and Y too, and S. I think it's the same lineage. I mean, most of them is like on the same lineage. And there's a R. R is another branch. In other words, these here up here are like the daughters of Madai, or the lineages of Madai. And then there's the R, and these are the other Semitic populations, because it's the N and the R divides into the other Semitic population. This B went to South America too, because in South America it's A, B, C, and D. So they just took all the mitochondrial lineages in South America, thinking they're all the same one. They made them, labeled them A, B, C, and D, except that A and B are Semitic and C and D are Eurasian. But this B went to America at a later time, crossing the Pacific as far as I can tell. So it didn't cross the Atlantic to Central America, which I still believe they did cross the Atlantic to Central America, because that's what the lineage shows them doing. Now, I don't know how my signal's holding up, but either I end the stream if it doesn't hold up too good. But let me see what else we got. Native American got Jewish empty DNA called X. That's actually, X is European, but it's Semitic, but not Jewish. It's from the lineage of A. It branches off of A and the W. It branches away from A and the W, but both the X and the W are in Europe. But the Jewish DNA is more the rest of the other ones, the B, the H, and stuff. But then again, they're in Europe as well. So I don't really know how that happened, but apparently maybe Gomer married a daughter of Shem too. So that's a possibility. The Ainu also carry other haplogroups. This Okay, if it's mtDNA, that's M D4 MZMF. F. So what's F? F1B. Is this all mtDNA? A5A. So the A is Semitic. This is the daughters of Madai, the A. That's in Asia as well. East Asian populations, yeah. Okay. The Ainu. Yeah, the Ainu are, yeah. Yeah, that's good. Of course, the M is all Eurasian. The D is Eurasian. Z is Eurasian. And the F, I guess, is the F is Semitic. The N is Semitic. But, basically, let's say you have a skirmish or something and a war, it's the Y DNA that's going to suffer. The mitochondrial DNA is going to survive. So, like the B left Mesopotamia area, went all the way through the South Pacific, all the way to America. It survived all the way to America, but the B's Y counterpart didn't even it's not even in the Philippines or anywhere in South Asia, whatever it was. So it's possible for these to survive, far and wide. So the F is Semitic, the N is Semitic, the A is Semitic, are daughters of Shem. I mean, as far as the maternal lineage is concerned. Of course, autosomally, they're probably Eurasian. They're all Eurasian. But yeah, that's interesting. The D, that's Eurasian. The Z is Eurasian. And I'm thinking the F is Semitic. But anyway, let's go to the next one. Jacob had 4 wives, if not all Semitic lineages. Rachel, Leah were daughters of Laban, Syrian. Bilhah, yeah, I don't know. Bilhah and Zipha. See, I think Bilhah was the concubine that produced Dan, the tribe of Dan. I don't know what they were. It's hard to say. I mean, you might be able to find out. I'm not saying you can't find out, but I don't know yet who they were. Probably if you found out where they were from, you might be able to guess what their mitochondrial DNA was, or in some way find out. But it's harder. It's harder to track. Like I said, it's harder to track Rachel, Leah, and these wives because it's it's not like a lineage you can follow very well. But they do, survive and end up in many different places. Okay, let me try HRAS if I can. Where's the HRAS? Oops, I don't have the HRAS. I guess I can pull it up. What's this? Oh, well, nah. So, let's go to HRAS. And we'll follow just one lineage of the Y chromosome. Y sequence, hrsYsequence.net or hras.ysequence.net. With this platform, you can follow the mitochondrial lineages and the Y chromosomal lineages wherever they go. And not wherever they go, because not all the data is there, but we can try to follow, let's say, the Q haplogroup, because this is one of the lineages that crossed over to Central America and spreads out north and south. The Q, the A, the C, and the D mitochondrials all make the same lineages, the same migration pattern. If we can, this thing go. Now, should I go just M3? I don't know if I'll try just M3, see what happens, because I don't want to get bogged down or anything. Maybe the M3 will be good to go to South America. I think that's the limited lineage in South America. It was the QM3. And there we go. So I'll put the little men in there. The little men migrations. There's all the little men. And we'll put the group migrations. Now notice these samples are all in America. But it comes from over here. I got to do it the other way. But if we go back in time, let's put this over here where we can see it. If we go back in time, we'll just backtrack a little bit. Oh, come on. Take it easy. Anyways, this is Central America, right? Let's backtrack in time. We'll go all the way back to the beginning. Yeah, let me go with just the Q. Let me try this one here. Just the Q, because this is not, it's kind of showing spreading north and south, but it's not showing the whole migration pattern anyway. So we'll go back to the entire Q. But it does kind of show spread north and south from Central America, basically, or South America. But it's a very interesting migration, because it is the Medes. Keeping in mind, it is the Medes. So, being the Medes, it would have to have come through the Mediterranean to Central America. So, as soon as this loads, might take a few more seconds, hopefully. Yeah, it's going to show what the migration pattern was. And it's the same migration pattern for the mitochondrial A, the mitochondrial C, and the mitochondrial D to the Americas. They clearly go to America, spread north and south. It's like a hub. It's like Central America is the hub. There it is. We'll put in the little men here, because it's a Y chromosome. And we'll put in the migration, because the little men are actual samples. These little men and the little daughters, little sons and daughters, they're actual samples. And if you follow the lineage, put in the migration lineage, you can see. Now here in America, it's mostly blue. But anyways, we'll backtrack in time, going back in time. Way back in time. Okay, here it goes. All the way back to the beginning. Where are we? Okay. Which is interesting. Look at this. Look at where it originates from. Or It's in this area too, but see this area right here is actually where the Medes originated from, right there. This area right there is where the Medes originated from. So let's go forward in time. See if we can follow a lineage. Oh, there we go, to the Caspian Sea, to Europe. Okay, so that's a lineage that goes right to Europe. This is Northern Europe. And of course, keeping in mind these little sons and daughters are actual samples. So it's not making anything up. Okay, now what's this? Oh, that's interesting. Oops. How'd that happen? So we're getting ahead of ourselves, I guess. But you can kind of get the idea here. Get the whole picture, get the whole idea. Back in time a little bit. Go back in time. Okay, there. So right here, when the Medes went up against the king of Lydia, apparently, from what this shows, that there was a migration that went through the Mediterranean, off the coast of Africa to the Caribbean. Now they changed it. They got one coming over this other way. Now, probably because I've been saying stuff. Before, it took forever for them to cross through Beringia. Now they have one crossing Beringia more in the timeline that they claim. But it's still, what I was saying is still true. The majority of the lineages crossed to Central America and spread north and south from Central America. But this is interesting. That's a novelty right there, because it used to be it took forever for them to cross from Siberia through Beringia to the United States, or to America. Now they have a lineage that crosses, I guess, from, what is this? That's not Japan. Japan's down here. But from somewhere in Siberia crosses to America somehow. But there's a sample right there. That number right there is the sample number. But then there's this other crossing that left a sample in South America. Now let's go forward in time. And we have samples in North America. There's a sample in North America, and there's like a hub there too. And it just keeps doing it. But that's interesting, because that wasn't here before. This Beringia crossing wasn't there before, but I've been making so many videos about it and arguing with Grok so much. Maybe they put that in there just to support their Beringia crossing, but it still doesn't compare with this crossing from the Mediterranean to Central America. Anyway, forward in time. See how that works? See how that spreads out? It just kind of explodes from a hub here in Central America. But first they land in the Caribbean, and then it just kind of like explodes from Central America, goes south and goes north. And this is the haplogroup of the Medes, by the way, which also following was the mitochondrial lineages, which I'm probably going to have to quit here in a little bit, but maybe I can follow mitochondrial lineage here. I don't know. Let's go to the mitochondrial lineage. That's the Y chromosome of the Medes. And so when the Medes went up into Europe and they went up against the king of Lydia, they went through the Mediterranean. Obviously, there's a lineage that went to these places. There's samples there in Europe, in England, and in Europe, Northern Europe. And the same place where the X and the W are in Europe too, which branches off from the Y lineage. So here we go with the mitochondrial lineage. We'll put in here A. There we go, A. A. Put A in there. It'll take. Guess it's still loading or something. Oh, no, it's not working. Come on. I'll put A in there. There we go, A. All right, A. Where's the, no, it's still not working. Hold on a second. Oh, this computer's too slow, I guess. There we go. We got A. Remember, A is the lineage that follows the Medes wherever the Medes went. Well, in Europe, it was the X and the W. So we're going to follow the migration of the mitochondrial lineage to none other than Central America. Of course, the mitochondrial lineage jumps around a lot more than the Y chromosome lineage because there's less mutations in the mitochondrial DNA than there is in the nuclear DNA. Nuclear DNA has a lot more possibility for mutations, or has a lot more DNA for more mutations to occur. The mitochondrial DNA is smaller, so there's less mistakes in the smaller genome, smaller DNA. So it tends to hop around a little bit more, or a lot more actually. But you can still follow the lineage, and it makes the exact same migration as the Q made. Same thing with the C and the D. If we had time to look at the C and the D, it would show the same thing. So here you can see that A is already in South America, right? So we'll put the little daughters in there. Put the daughter icons in there. And of course, the little people icons, they're actual samples, from the location. And there you can see all the white daughters, or I don't know if you can see it, but there's a whole bunch of white daughters there now. Now put the lineages in there, or the migrations, the connections between all the different nodes, all the different lineages. Okay, we're getting there, we're getting close now. Migration from target haplogroup to children. These are all the children's right there. All the daughters of Madai, or the daughters of Shem, actually, but of one of the daughters of Shem. Okay, we'll backtrack now, go back in time. We'll go back in time, see what happens. We'll go back to the beginning if it'll take us there. Keep it in mind, it jumps around a lot more. There we go. Okay, so going back to their timeline of 20,000 years, notice we already have a sample in basically Central America, right? And we'll see what happens when we go forward in time. Of course, there was probably back migration too. Maybe not as much as the forward migration, but what happens? There's one in South America, ends up in South America. Keeping in mind it jumps around. So it probably still went to Central America and ended up in South America. As you can, we'll be able to see right here. See this? Going north and south from Central America. You can clearly see that now. Yeah. And north and south from Central America. This is, according to their timeline, 7,400 years ago. But these are, of course, actual samples that have been found in these areas, or close to the areas anyway. So that's, and the CNA mitochondrial lineage does the exact same thing. Spreads out north and south, just like you see here from Central America. So there's no getting around it, no getting out of it. Sure they came through the Bering Strait too. Some lineages did, but the majority migrated from Europe or Mediterranean to Central America and spread north and south from Central America. Because there's 4 haplogroup lineages that show that. So there we go. That's should be good for now, I think. I'll go ahead and take this out. And we'll go ahead and end the stream before it gets too bad, weather turns bad or something happens. All right, so there it was. God bless everybody. Take care and have a great week, rest of the week. Take care. Wow, my computer's really slow.